The David Cassidy Connections with Louise Poynton. Cherish the legacy.
Hello everyone and welcome to the David Cassidy Connections, your podcast all about David. From fans, friends, musicians, actors and anyone influenced by his life. Remember you can click the subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts from so you will be alerted when new episodes are released. Thank you for downloading this podcast. Today my guest is Doug Voet, singer, actor, producer, horse lover and close friend of David's. Doug has an illustrious stage career. It was while starring on Broadway in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat that he met David, who was called in to take over the title role in 1983. Doug taught David the role and their friendship grew. David offered Doug a new direction in his career when he was working in Las Vegas, inviting him to produce a new show he had created. Doug went on to work as tour manager for his US and UK tours, and in our absorbing conversation, Doug talks about their friendship, David's love of the Great American Songbook, why the stage was so important to him, his fears of being famous, why Joseph was such a good role for him, and a number of amusing memories of a cherished friendship. He also explains why he affectionately called him the Elf. Here is my conversation with Doug Voet. It's great to see you again.
Thank you.
Your friendship with David was very much like the coming together of two soulmates.
Mm-hmm.
You told me that David gave you the best part of his life and everything goes back to him. Can you remind me how you met?
I met David when he came in to replace me in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. David came in. He was doing Little Johnny Jones on the road, and our producers wanted David Cassidy, and everybody knew that David would be a marvelous Joseph, and he was. As happens in the West End as well as on Broadway, when a show has had quite a long run, then they decide it's good to bring in a star to help box office. And so David came in for 6 months, and when David's time was done, then the show closed. But we had been open for about 2.5 years. So he did the last part of the show. And we became fast friends. And then we parted ways, as happens in any theatrical experience. And we didn't see each other again for many years. And that was in Vegas. So Billy Hutton was originally the original Joseph. And then I took over for him 6 months in. And then Andy Gibb came in. And poor Andy had a lot of demons. There was one other fellow who came in. It didn't last very long. And then they decided, let's bring in David. And they thought that David would be, and they were right, that David would be a really good sell for Joseph. Because Joseph is a sweet little guy, and so is David. So when David came into the company, I remember getting a call that we needed to all go to the wardrobe room. And the wardrobe room is the only place you could smoke. Now, who knows who thought that this was a good idea with costumes and cleaning supplies. But anyway, in those days, we all smoked. And I walked in, and here's this cute little David smoking my brand, Marlboro Lights, at the time when we all smoked. And I just thought that he was charming. The girls, of course, were absolutely gaga for him. And I introduced myself, and I said, and David, I think I'm going to be teaching you this show. And he said, well, that would be great, because I've been doing it forever. And that's really how we became friends, because I taught him the show according to what I did. And then every actor takes a twist on who that character really is. And David did as well. We all do. So that's really why he came in, was to save the show. And box office went crazy. And, of course.
Of course. Let me take you back a little bit further in your own career, because this leads to Joseph. You came to the UK and you studied at the Central School of Drama and the Dance Centre in Covent Garden. It was while you were here in the UK that you saw Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. When you go back to the States, tell us what happened after that, which led to you landing the lead role when the show came to Washington, D.C.
As you well know, Joseph is a big pantomime show. And it still is quite a short piece, but I went to see Joseph. So when I came back to America after studying abroad, I was in Washington and I saw a notice for auditions for Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. It was going to have a limited run. And I had a beard at that time. And I thought, well, I can go play one of the brothers. I mean, I'll go down there and audition. They said, come back tomorrow, but would you shave? He said, but I look biblical, don't you think? And they said, no, just shave. I said, okay. I went home, I shaved, I came back the next day, and they had me sing a couple of things, and they had me move. And then they said, come back tomorrow. Okay. I said, this has to be something. And so after I went the third time, they said, we will be offering you a job. Drink a whole lot of malteds and maybe a lot of beer because you're too skinny. And I was a beanpole at that time. That's changed. So they said, first day of rehearsal, we'll extend contracts. And I said, okay. I had no idea that I was cast as Joseph in Joseph. I had no idea. I thought I would have been a fine brother with my beard. So Wayne Cilento was the choreographer, and Wayne is, he was a choreographer, Wicked, and so many things. We rehearsed the show at Union Station because they were renovating the train station, and because Ford's Theater is owned by the government, it's a national monument, it's national treasure. We opened and we were only supposed to run 6 weeks, and we ran for 6 months. And from that show, the two producers were able to talk Andrew into letting them have the rights to perform the show in New York City. I didn't open New York as Joseph. I was one of the brothers. But then I eventually, when Billy Hutton left, I went in. It was just this little show. And by the way, today is January 28th. And today marks our first performance of Joseph on Broadway. We opened a little theater down on the east side called the Intermedia Theater. So, but today, the 28th is our anniversary. 40 years ago, we opened on Broadway. It was a great happenstance. We all do lots of things in show business. I mean, I think I've done everything except to drive a dustbin truck, because we have to survive. I used to tell my kids when I was teaching, everything is about 15 minutes. And I'm not talking about 15 minutes of fame. I'm talking about decisions that you make. That 15 minutes when you make a decision or you do something can change your life exponentially. I said, so y'all want to be actors? When you get that call from a casting agent or from a manager and say, I think this might be good for you, you need to go. And you're sitting there thinking, I just put hamburgers on the grill. I don't think I'm going to go. I'll just blow it off. Had I not gone to that little audition at Ford's Theater, I wouldn't have starred on the stage at Ford's, and then was able to take the final bow on a Broadway stage because of those 15 minutes that I selected to just go. And it's scary to audition. It's really awful. I mean, any actor that tells you that they love to audition, they're nuts. There's nothing more vulnerable than being a performer. Really, at the end of the day, it's David would come off stage and go, "How did it sound?" Because I would always. There was a period of time when I was backup singer for him. I did it all, but he would come off stage because he wanted to make sure that it sounded okay.
Can you remember the first time you did any rehearsals together when you say you were teaching him the show?
Yeah, we did. But it was a lot easier because I was doing the role. And so it was just so much more simple for him to just say, well, this is the left, this is this, down right, left, and it made it a lot easier. And as a result of that, I really believe that's why we became friends. I really do, because we spent more time than we normally would. I would have just been another, somebody else, as opposed to someone that worked with him and in this role.
His interpretation of Any Dream Will Do. I remember seeing a clip of him on the Merv Griffin show.
Yes.
Where he'd done a matinee that afternoon and had run across to appear on the show. The reception he received from the audience was astonishing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't astonishing to you or to me, but to be able to sit there and see an audience reaction. Was the first night like that for him?
Yeah, what I think that we forget, and those of us who are friends or fans or aficionados of David, is that even, and let's see, so that he was probably around 30, 31, because we were just a few months apart from each other, and he was still a phenomenon. Now, we have to remember that when he was doing the Partridge Family, he was still 18, 19, and he continued to work, and he had his own television series and a lot of things. But still at 29, 30 years old, he was still cute as a bug, and he had support of so many people. And when David walked on stage, because I don't know if you recall, but all of the brothers came out. There was on the stage was this little hut, a little tent, and there was a trap door underneath that. So as all the brothers were introduced by Laurie Beachman or whatever narrator, and then last was David. But we all came out of this little tiny tent. It was really not any bigger than that. And when David hit the floor, then they had to just fill time with the orchestra, because he's David. And people really, they took him all in.
I mean, he took on a tremendous challenge when he took the lead in Joseph.
Yeah. But you know what? Joseph, that little guy, I loved playing that little guy. I wish that I was as nice as Joseph, the biblical Joseph really was. So it was like, not about killed both of us to have to be 28, 29 years old and act like 10 years younger. Our music director, David Friedman, was just a stickler when it came to backbeating. And so that was a big challenge for David. It was a big challenge for me, because I was under contract with RCA when I first started. And that generation, and David as well, it's like everything is supposed to be this way. If you're saying, close every door to me, David would always want to do, close every door to me. And it's like the music director, no. This is Broadway. You have to close every door to me. Bum, 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 bum. So that was a challenge for him. I thought that it was a really good choice to have David in that role, because it didn't put him in a place where he could possibly fail. He was cute, charming, skinny little thing. And he was playing a character that he could put his teeth into. It was a very short show. Remember, Joseph was written when the boys were 15.
Yeah.
And at that time, I think it only was 20 minutes. And so they added a couple of things, but our producers had all the rights to rescore it. Nowadays, Andrew controls absolutely everything, but our production, Andrew had really kind of given it all away. So in the original show, there's not an intermission. So they put an intermission, Then they did 5 years of reprises of every number. And yet we shared the stage door with 42nd Street, which is it's a big old show. Out of our makeup, costumes, and on the way to the subway before the first act of 42nd Street came down. So we had the best deal in town. And we were also under what they called the Peter Pan schedule, because when Peter Pan was running on Broadway, there were so many children in it, and there were so many young people that wanted to see that show that they added an extra matinee on. So there were matinees on both Saturday and Sunday. So we were lucky. We were off on Monday and Tuesday and didn't have to go back to work till Wednesday. So not only did we have the shortest show in town, but we had the greatest schedule. So it's like, it was 2.5 years of just having fun. And when David came in, we continued to have fun. It was a really good role for David because Joseph is sweet. He doesn't understand why people wouldn't like him just because he's interpreting dreams. You know, it's just like, well, why would you not like me? And so David, as bright and worldly as David was, he was still a little baby in a lot of ways. And he didn't understand why anyone would not like him or not get who he was. So I thought that Joseph was the perfect role for him because he was a man-child.
Because so often roles that actors take on, they bring a lot of themselves to it.
Oh, you must. I mean, you know, it's. I always find it interesting when people have to play murderers or something like that, because if you're not a murderer, then you're trying to find something in that character that you can bring honesty to when you're performing. So we'd be liars and hypocrites as actors to not say, no, this is me. This is me with an adaptation. But David was right for the role. He really was.
Can you remember when he sang for you for the show for the first time?
I just thought that it was a totally different approach, because David was, I close my eyes, because David liked to sing with a little bit of this. I close my eyes, drew back, so, and I do, I close my eyes. So it was totally personal and different, and it worked. So it was kind of like, oh, this is cool. It's exactly what you were talking about, in that an actor brings who they are to the lyric set and to the performance that's required.